Now, if you're like me, you probably have more than 10 RC cars. If you got into RC cars in the past 20 years, the thing about RC cars is you can't just have one. You end up with a whole collection of them. Sometimes people that collect RC cars have more cars than some of the guys that fly FPV drones that watch this channel. But today, I'm hoping that my dream came true. Radiomaster RC released the MT12 a while back now. We've had this radio for some time. But what I'm hoping is that I can take that entire box full of transmitters over there that I have in storage for all of my RC cars and kind of compact them all into one radio. Wouldn't it be nice if we could have all of our RC cars and trucks and crawlers and everything else on one radio, RC boats as well. So combine all of those and not have to switch between or grab the wrong radio, which I've done in the past before. I have to label them with a paint marker just to figure out which radio goes with which car, truck, or boat. So that could be kind of a pain. So it would be nice to have them all on one radio. And that's what today's video is all about. And again, I'm not the first person to come out with a review for the Radiomaster MT12. I've had it for a while. I've been testing it for a while. And I usually don't rush to be first in line to review. So with my experiences today, you get to enjoy this content and my experiences. So yeah, hopefully you benefit from that. And there's also some information in this video that you may not have seen in the influencers videos. In this video, we're going to talk about one of the caveats for Spektrum radio users of Spektrum receivers as well. There's something you need to know before you jump into buying an MT12 if you think that you're going to replace all of your Spektrum receivers and bind them up with the MT12. So very important information for Spektrum radio users of RC cars and boats and trucks. So stay tuned. Let's go ahead and jump into the features of it, and we'll talk about what that one caveat is that I experienced with a friend of mine. I'm gonna let you know now. Okay, let's just jump right into the MT12, and I'm gonna just go ahead and I'm gonna jump into the information that I know a lot of people in the RC car, truck, and boat community are looking for. The information on, will this work with my Spektrum receivers? Now, you probably already have a Spektrum radio. If you have an RC car, it's the most popular probably radio out there in the RC car community. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Spektrum is huge in the surface RC hobby community with Horizon Hobby, and a lot of people around the world use that. Now, there are several different types of protocols that you need to know about with Spektrum receivers. And a friend of mine and I came across this week where he got the version of the Radiomaster MT12 that was the 4-in-1. So he was expecting that, yeah, it's been talked about. The MT12 4-in-1 will bind to Spektrum receivers. So he was hoping to replace all of his transmitters with this one handy dandy transmitter right here. So yeah, I said handy dandy. But the problem is the SRX 300. This is a very common Spektrum receiver that a lot of guys have and own and use. And this particular receiver, if you look closely on there, it says FHSS on there. So that means that this Spektrum receiver will not bind up to the Radiomaster MT12 4-in-1 version. I have the ELRS version here. My friend John has the 4-in-1 version. And I honestly would have rather had the 4-in-1 version because a lot of my receivers may bind up to the 4-in-1 version. With the ELRS version, I'm going to have to get ELRS receivers running ELRS firmware 3.0 or better. This does come with ELRS firmware, and it doesn't have all the other protocols, just ELRS. So depending on what your needs are for an all-in-one radio, if you already have a bunch of ELRS receivers on your aircraft and you're just going to use ELRS, fine, get the ELRS version. If not, if you already have a bunch of RC cars that you don't want to buy new receivers for, go ahead and get the 4-in-1. But what you need to know if you're a Spektrum guy is that the SRX 300 series receivers in a lot of people's RC cars will not bind up to the MT12 currently. Now, what I'm hoping and petitioning for is that Edge TX developers, maybe ELRS folks, in cooperation with Radiomaster, maybe they can update the amount of protocols inside the 4-in-1 version to accept the FHSS protocol. And typically that standard is set to Futaba years ago. FHSS is very standardized. And I was hoping that maybe the 4-in-1 had the FHSS protocol, because I'm like, hey, John, just switch over to the FHSS protocol. But he was telling me that his multi 4-in-1 version didn't have that. So that is, questionable to me. I'm gonna look further into this and see if we can find a solution for that, and hopefully we can get his Radiomaster MT12 bound up to his SRX 300 from Spektrum, because that would be pretty awesome, because most of his cars have that receiver, and I bet you that most of your cars probably have that same receiver. It's just a little 3-channel, fairly decent range little receiver. Now, some of the other protocols that I'm hoping that will show up later, as well as other things like the DHK hobby receivers. I have a bunch of those cars from years past, reviews on this channel, and it would be nice if I could bind up my FMS trucks and crawlers to my Radiomaster MT12. And there is an expansion module on the very top of this radio. So even though I got the ELRS version 1, I can still put a receiver, a module on here, and be able to do 4-in-1. So if Radiomaster sends me the 4-in-1 receiver module, I can add that on there and then have more protocols on this radio. So they are expandable. Even if you get the ELRS version 1, you can still expand your protocols for adding different types of receivers out there. So I'm hoping that these protocols expand in the coming months. Now let's go ahead and do a weigh-in against the SRX 300, since that is the most popular Spektrum receiver out there right now, and we're looking at 9.2 grams, and that's 9.1 grams. That's with the antenna. So the ECR1 here, or the ER3CI, is 4 grams. So Radiomaster really has kind of been able to make these ultra lightweight. Now that's without the antenna wire on there, and I believe they do have a ceramic antenna built into these, so they are kind of different than the long wire that extends outside your RC car. With these, you don't need that because you have that ceramic antenna inside here. This is the 4-channel one, the ERSC-I, and that one's coming in at 4.7. So if you need 4 channels, you're only adding not even just a little over 0.5 gram extra for 4 channels. Now this SRX 300 came out of my axial Capra that I have, and my axial Capra is now a couple years old. I've had it for a while, but that tells me that this one is fairly recent. It's not DSM2, which I really wish it was, because since it was this FHSS receiver, I had to pull it, and I had to use one of Radiomaster's receivers. I ended up not using I ended up using actually the ER5C, which is not pictured here, but it's inside the Capra now. So that one is working flawless now, but it did take a little bit of kind of tinkering to get all of my channel maps correct, to make the wheels turn the right direction and things like that. So if you're not familiar with Edge TX radio operations, it's going to be a little bit confusing to you if you're coming from Spektrum to be able to just set up the direction of the wheels, also the direction of the throttle and things like that. So you don't want things going the wrong direction. But after a little bit of tinkering, I guess about 20 minutes worth of playing around with Edge TX, I was able to get that working properly. If you guys need some type of tutorial on that, let me know. We can probably just do a short tutorial on that and get you up to speed on making sure your channel maps are all moving the right directions for your RC car setups. But yeah, just let me know about that. But for now, I mean, what a difference in size of Radiomaster's offerings and the SRX 300. So I'm happy to shave off a little bit of weight, but with RC cars and trucks, it's not such a big deal for weight. And I know, some people in the crawler community really add a little bit extra weight because of front end type balance, and CG is totally different on RC crawlers than it is on RC trucks and cars even. So it just depends on what your mode is, what you're trying to do with your RC cars and trucks. But for me, that's kind of a nice little weight savings because I'm definitely not a pro RC car guy. So another thing about this radio, I took this one over to our local RC track, PDX Underground, and I showed this off to the owner and a few of the other guides that were there. Really quickly, I realized oh my God, hey, this transmitter is great, but it's not even close to the type of quality and control that some of the other guys at the track have. They've also spent, in upwards of $500 to $800, depending on what type of transmitter they're running and how serious they are about racing and indoor racing, particularly at this track. So I learned really quickly that while this is a pretty awesome radio, it's not really going to be the best radio in the RC car industry by any means. But it is kind of cool that it has the multi-protocol function to it. So that's what this radio is sets apart from in any of the other radios in the community so far. I don't believe that there's a multi-protocol radio available. I know a lot of people like the aftermarket cheaper FlySky radios. Those have the computer controller on top. It gives them tons of function. And my friend Diego was looking at that years ago, which I think he has one of those. He was able to also hold this in his situation. He is missing some digits on his hand, so for him to be able to hold the radio and still be able to get to the trigger, if you are a person that has a handicap with your hands and you are missing some digits off your hand, this radio was comfortable for him, and he was able to reach and access the trigger for the throttle, so and comfortably hold this radio. At first, he didn't really think that it was going to work out for him, but he was surprised to know that it actually does. And so that's good to know about the ergonomics of this radio. Now, as far as powering the MT12, it's pretty much like a lot of other RC car radios out there and Radiomaster radios. It takes two 18650s, making it a 2S configuration, and it is internally chargeable by the USB-C port on the very back. You also have an alternate function button back here as well. You have some LEDs that light up when we turn this radio on, which is also kind of a neat feature of this radio. If you long press and hold here, it will turn on after about 2 to 3 seconds, and we see Edge TX as the native operating system, which is super cool. We also have a few different function buttons here. We have system, we have a little MT12 here. It's kind of embossed into the top of the radio, and there is the speaker as well. You have voice prompt, you have model menus, put unlimited models on here. It's expandable with SD card as well. The on-off button in the middle, the jog wheel for selecting things and changing this main screen, return button here, and the telemetry button here. You also have special feature function buttons on the front of the radio for trims. You can also make these switches, which is kind of cool. That's a whole different tutorial. We have potentiometers front and back, P1 and P2 right here, and a fairly, decent steering wheel on this, which is also adjustable. And it is not switchable from side to side, so there's no way to do that I see. But over here we have a trapdoor where the SD card is. We have a programming slot. We also have a USB-C port right there for updates, and we have a headphone jack. And this just snaps back on like this. This is also the converter. If you want to add some type of module in there and do some bay expansion, you can also do that, which is kind of cool. And I actually got this as an add-on. I'm not sure that this actually comes with your MT12, so you might want to look into this, but this is the option to be able to add some 4-in-1 multi-protocol to the MT12, which is kind of cool. And beyond expansion with that module bay, there's also more, which is pretty cool. You can add extra switches with this module. It can plug in on the very top of the radio, as well as this little guy right here, which is a jog and push button type of selector. So it's kind of cool. You have more expansion than even I realized with this radio. And there's also a seeker button on the MT12 that many people might not know about. It's just underneath the steering wheel right here, and this is the SB button. So if you're here and your thumb is here, you have access to the SB button. Maybe you want to put some LEDs or something on that button, but it is easy to reach with your thumb, and it's kind of convenient. Now, if we look around the side of the radio, you also see these little screw ports on the side. This is for extra types of expansion if you want to add things on here later, which is kind of cool, different modules or things like that you want to, maybe you have a 3D printed type of grip system on here or something that additionally you want to put on the radio, which is kind of a nice option. Also on the back of the radio, just behind the screen and the jog wheel, you have your wrist strap right here. So this is the wrist strap connector, and inside the box, you get a decent one. It says the Radiomaster logo on there. It is Also kind of maybe leather. It looks like it might actually be leather. And this little clip just clips right onto here and comfortably goes around my wrist. It is a little bit stiff, but I think over time it may kind of loosen up or wear in, but that's just gonna keep you from dropping your radio to the ground and breaking it. Now in this section of the video, I'm gonna show you kind of basic operations of the internal screens, and you can see my timeout display here. You can set that to be longer or never turn off. You can also turn up and down the beeps and the way that this entire interface looks. It's very familiar to anyone that has FPV drones. If you're running any type of Radiomaster or OpenTX or EdgeTX operating system, this will be very easy for you. I did have to play around with reversing some of the servo directions and things like that. If you are a Spektrum user, this part of this video is going to be great for you, because I'm going to kind of show you how to kind of reverse a servo in here. It's different inside EdgeTX than so easy inside the Spektrum radio. So just so easy for their interface. It's quite a bit easier than this one. So if you do get this one, you're going to have some learning curve, but hopefully this helps you out. So this is our main screen right here. We have our battery telemetry right there, 7.2 volts. It also shows me channel directions right here. You can see this one go to the right, and this is our wheel control, and throttle will be on the throttle channel, which would be right here. So when I pull back, it shows this little arrow going up. When I press up, it shows that this is in the reverse direction right here. So that's gonna be something that you might have to adjust. These are all of our different trim switches. And remember, I was telling you that these trim switches are around the wheel here. So you can hear trim center when you hit to center, which is nice. So if you need to do any fine tuning and adjustment, you can do it all with these on the side. And you can also make these a switch for function as well. So turning on LEDs on and off, things like that, light bars, which is kind of cool. Now, if you want to get to your model, say you're setting up a model, you're going to hit model here. It's going to take you to your model list, and you'll see MT12 there. I added my Capital on Model 2. And if I want to get inside that Model 2, those settings, I'm going to use the page buttons, which are down here. Page forward and page back will navigate through the pages in that particular model. So I'm going to hit page forward here, and that will take me inside this model menu. Now we can play around with all of these different functions. The way you're going to scroll up and down in the setup menu is use your jog wheel. It's pretty easy. I'm just going to go straight to the bottom by pressing up, and that will take me all the way to the bottom. We can set it up as a joystick. It also works with RC car simulators. If you have one, you can plug in the USB-C cable and do that. So right now it's set up to mode classic. We can change that if we want. And we can scroll up by using that jog wheel. And right now I'm going to show you my protocol settings here. So that just means which internal protocol we're using. CRSF. So CRSF is native protocol for ELRS receivers. That's what you need if you're using ELRS. Now if I click on that, and since I have the ELRS version radio, if I try to change that to anything else, since I don't have the 4-in-1 version, it won't let me change to any other type of protocol receivers other than ELRS. So I wish it had more expansion to be able to have just included 4-in-1 in this radio, so I just have everything. Wouldn't that be awesome? But I can also change other things for internal RF here, and external RF is where you want to add your 4-in-1 module into the expansion bay. So if that was the case, I would turn this off, turn external RF on. Now, as far as, let's just get back, let's go back out of this menu to the top here. And we're going to press page again. You're going to go to heli setup, which you don't need. I would be terrified to fly a heli on this. We have drive modes here, inputs, and mixes here. So if you're trying to, say, add in a switch, you're going to do a lot of that right here. So we can use the jog wheel again, and we have throttle here. So I'm not going to reverse the throttle by any means, but I'm going to show you how to do that. If you're a Spektrum guy, this is awesome. So I'm going to click that button there, kind of long press it, it'll bring up this menu here. Click edit, So once you do that, you can go down to throttle here, and you can change the source by just touching anything on this radio and automatically change it right there. So if you want to have throttle on a different channel, if your receiver is set up differently, you can do that. I'm not going to do that, but the way you reverse servos in a Radiomaster radio with OpenTX or Edge TX on here is you go to this screen right here in mixes, and this word says wait. It really should say servo or reversing, but you know, on RC drones we don't use servos, so since the beginning of time it's always said wait, and that's just different than a Spektrum radio, so that might be confusing. So right now it says 100, and since this is my throttle, I can click on that by making that selection, and now I can change this, and you'll see these numbers here change, and you should see this bar move, and as I go from one side to the other, see right now you see that little bar is expanding. In the center it comes right dead center. When I get to 0, you'll see no bar there, so that bar will disappear. Now the weight is totally dead center, and that would be on that particular servo, but this is the throttle channel, so we're using the ESC here, but we're going to go back to 100, and what that does is it creates a 0 to 100 scenario for throttle, and that's what we're trying to do here. So I already had that set, but that's just depending on your ESC, which one you have. But that's the way that, so if this was a servo, let me just back out and go to a different channel here. That would be my steering servo. So ST right there is my steering servo. Bad example for me to show you throttle change there, but again, go to weight if you want to reverse a servo. So this is our steering servo in the front of the Capra over here, and now if I went negative 100, that would be completely reversed. Right now it's at 100, so that's the direction that I want for my travel. You can also offset, which I'm not going to talk about that, but click it again. Once it's flashing, you can move the jog wheel just like this, and I can go negative 100 super fast. So that will reverse the servo at negative 100, and that's the way you reverse your servo, your steering servo. So now I'm negative 100, and that would be backwards for me. So right would be left and left would be right. I don't want that, so I'm going to put it back in my scenario to positive 100. And it really depends on your RC car, but you can do this, and you know, as you you test your RC car, you'll see the results immediately after you make a selection. So I'm going to go back to 100 here, and now my Capra is back to working properly. So right will be right, and left will be left. And you just press that button to make a selection. To get out of this menu completely, you can press the return button on the bottom left, take it back to mixes, and then you can go back to the standard mixes menu, press it again 2 more times, and it'll take you back to the main screen. Now, if you want to bind an ELRS receiver, it's the same as any of the other ELRS receivers out there. Your receiver has to be the same firmware version as the radio that you're using. So if one is off or the other, then you need to update one or the other, or both. In my instance, both of these the radio and the receiver are on the same firmware. So the way that we do that on an ELRS radio, go into system here, see where it says Express LRS. Yeah, and we also have games in here like Asteroids Breakout, Pong Simulator, Snake, Extras. But I'm going to make a selection there for Express LRS, and that's the long name for ELRS. So now it sees my menus in here, and you see it's set to F100. Telemetry is standard, switch mode wide, model match is off. That just makes things easier for me. I don't have to enter any type of model number. And all the way at the bottom, there's the bind button. And the way you're going to do this is you're going to plug in your battery to your RC car 3 times. 1, 2, 3 really quickly, and it will put that receiver into bind mode. It'll start beeping red, flashing twice. And once it's flashing twice, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, then you can hit the bind button here. And once you unplug this car, so let me show you. When I plug in the Capra, it should say telemetry found. Okay. If we don't hear anything, then, you know, maybe this radio is not set up for it. But if I unplug the Capra, so now my wheels are moving to the right, To the left, that's correct. And again, if you need to switch that servo, I showed you how to do that. Now you know. We could go into bind, but it might unbind it. So I'm just going to unplug it real quick and see if it says an audible telemetry lost. So let me just go back to the main screen in case it's kind of trumping me out there, because we're in the... So go back, please. Okay, so now we're back on the main screen. I'm going to unplug the battery and let's see if it says telemetry lost. Telemetry lost. Perfect. So now you know that you had a connection to your receiver. So if you went through the bind process and when you unplug your RC car or truck, it doesn't say telemetry lost, you're probably not bound to your radio. So, you know, for most people, this should be like the holy grail of RC cars and trucks and boats. I swear to God. But, you know, when I went to the RC car track, you know, I realized some people could care less. They're using the same radios they've been using for 20 years. And I get that, and I respect that as well, because when it comes to, you know, say latency and what they're used to, sometimes people are hard pressed to switch to something that is different, that they have to learn about. You have to watch a video like this to learn about. But, you know, if you're just a general RC car user, I think that is who this is marketed towards. This is not really marketed towards the guys who are the top pro racers for Team Associated. And I respect what they do. I respect that craft. That is a completely different craft than what we're talking about here in this video. This is just for general use, in my opinion. If you're racing in an RC car track, I feel like you could race with this. I think, but you know, my friend Diego races. And I feel like he could use this radio. He's a good racer. He's getting better all the time as well. So I gotta say, like, thumbs up to Diego for constantly evolving in his new situation in life. And if you have any type of handicap, you know what I'm talking about. So cheers out to Diego for that. Just how positive he is, and he's such a good guy. So if you are looking for some type of expansion, maybe you want to add all your RC cars into one radio. This is kind of an easy way to do it. And after you get past the learning curve, you know, honestly will take you some time. So is this radio perfect? No. Is any radio perfect? No. Will you have to probably replace your SRX 300 receivers? Most likely. If you have DSM or DSM2 receivers, those will bind up with the 4-in-1 version. So make sure you get the right one. Get the 4-in-1 version if you have Spektrum DSM2 receivers in all your RC cars. If you have the FHSS ones, you're going to need more expansion for FHSS protocol to be able to bind to these. And that's not confirmed yet that these will bind up. So this one may be left in the dust. And that's why I had to pull mine out of my Capra as well. So John and I both can't use our SRX 300s, unfortunately. You know, and you just open up this little box in the back of the car and put a new receiver in there, but that's another receiver you have to go out and buy. So I'm going to put some links down below for the MT12. It benefits the channel. If you benefited in this information, become my Patreon on the channel, subscribe, hit the like button, and grab one of these. I use affiliate links. It's how I keep the channel going, and I'm not ashamed of that. So I spend all my days and time making video for you guys, and I enjoy this, and I will never quit. As long as I'm breathing, this channel will be online. So I appreciate you subscribing and hanging out again. Thank you for watching, and take care, and I will see you on the next one.